Sean McVay, still the coach of the Rams. John Lynch, still the GM of the 49ers. Troy Aikman, still not at ESPN yet. Herbie apparently leveraging Amazon. And Andrew Marchand said Amazon Prime Video was prepared to offer McVay maybe $100 million for Thursday Night Football. But then McVay said no and is staying with the Rams. And so then the story was that maybe John Lynch would be up next, especially if Aikman were to leave Fox for Monday Night Football for $90 million, which is allegedly the deal that is out there, waiting for him.
Well, I've been told that John Lynch, and he had leverage coming in, right? He wasn't your typical first-time GM. He was making $4 or $5 million at Fox. So he had a baseline to get paid. If you make $4 or $5 million as a general manager, GMs don't make as much as coaches. You're immediately Joe Douglas a couple years ago. Remember what it was like? The Jets didn't. He kind of had him by the balls. It's like he hadn't signed yet. He ended up making, I think someone told me, almost $4 million. I think it was like 3.8. He immediately became a top 5 paid GM. We're coaches, right? If you're making $5 million, we were making fun of Zach Taylor, who was making 3.9 or whatever, and he was the lowest paid coach. So John Lynch got a contract extension after he was signed. Right? He got his first contract, and then he got a contract extension. I think it's fair to say that John Lynch probably makes $6-7 million, which, if you factor out the coaches that are GMs too, I don't know how many GMs. Ozzie Newsome's retired, who, remember when he retired, Bouchatti said that he's going to be the highest paid retired GM in league history. Remember, he's going to keep him on salary. But he's not making what Ozzie once was, which I think was like $10 million. But there's a chance that John Lynch is just in a vacuum the highest paid GM in the league right now at $7 or $8 million, right?
I think, yes, because I think part of the thing to add to that, right, it's not just that he signed a contract extension. He signed a contract extension coming off a Super Bowl appearance, right?
And he was beloved, right?
Not all contract extensions are created equal. Like the one you sign when things are just going well is different than the one you sign when you just went to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. So he's making a ton of money. Now, I was thinking about this weekend before we get into McVay. And I'll even lump McVay into this too. McVay did not get into football for the money. When you read and watch his story, he got in with John Gruden probably making 15, 20 grand. John Lynch, it's different when you're young, right? You just get in because you love football, and then he ended up making money. It turns out really young because he got a head coaching job at 31. John Lynch did not leave Fox to come back to the NFL for the money. He just didn't. If anything,
he left Fox because the money the money was not enough to justify him doing the thing that didn't fulfill him the way competing does.
And I think it's fair to say, let's just say he made the same exact salary just because the salary was so big. He came back for the juice of football. So when this story came out that they were offering him a ton of money, my first thought was, could it just be as simple as someone puts $90 to $100 million on the table? Same thing with Sean McVay. Wouldn't you kind of be a moron not to just, hey, let's have a meeting? Isn't that just how human beings in the business private sector? I mean, you and me have had meetings with people just because, hey, this might be prudent to have a meeting with this person. Not because, I'm not even that interested, but let's talk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Once you talk, and I've never had if any human being, I don't care who they are, gets the numbers like that, I think you have to be like, yeah, it's probably smart to just talk to someone.
I'd say on 3 levels. It's smart just to talk to him because when someone puts that kind of money in front of you, it's almost irresponsible not to listen, even though without that contract, you'll still be rich for life and your kids will be rich if you want them to be. 2, from a business standpoint, you still want to get paid even if you're doing what you love, what you're worth. And so when you have an opportunity to gain leverage, you do it. And number 3, maybe in 10 years or 5 years or 2 years, your priorities change and you want to go back to TV. It's helpful to have that relationship, right, already established with whoever, Amazon or, obviously he has the relationship with Fox. But people come and go. It's never a bad thing. I think on 3 fronts it makes sense to listen if you're John Lynch or Sean McVay, even if you don't think you're going to go.
For both guys, different. McVay won the Super Bowl, so he has the ring as a coach. John has a ring, too, as a player. But to win a ring as a player and then as a general manager for the 49ers, think at what's at stake. If he went back to TV right now, he's pretty fucking accomplished, right? Just in terms of his general manager career. He worked for Kyle Shanahan. He went to multiple championship games, and he went to a Super Bowl, and he was a GM that drafted countless Pro Bowl players. So he has that on his resume, and you kept telling me, and you were right, he's way more valuable now than he was 5 years ago. He has an added element just because if you put him in that Fox booth right away with Joe Buck, think of they do all the NFC games, and then you end up doing a lot of NFC West games. He knows those teams like the back of his hand. He's evaluated every player in the league. His value the first couple years would be incredible, right? His knowledge of the players in the league. But I do wonder, he was clearly, Kyle wanted Mac Jones at the start. We've acknowledged that. It's almost like he was talked out of it. Well, who fucking talked him out of it? Not Jed York. It was like John and Adam Peters. You got to take the higher ceiling guy. And I give Kyle credit. Ultimately, it's not who you liked at first. He came to the decision, and they're all on board. Trey Lance is on their team. If Trey Lance becomes a really good player, there is nothing the TV cash can give you than what you would become if you win a Super Bowl or two with Kyle and Trey Lance, right? That's unquantifiable because he's already making a ton of money. His team's really good, but he has this opportunity to shoot to the fucking moon with this guy. You might as well, to me, the risk is worth it to hold on to it. Now, the rocket might crash. There's a possibility. It could be not work. But I don't know how you'd ever live with yourself if you left and then he became, worst case, to be like Josh Allen or something. You're like, oh my God, I'm already working hard. I'm already there, right? If I'm not quote unquote burned out or whatever, I can at least handle through, the rookie contract of this guy and just see it out. And really his rookie contract's a little shorter, right? Because he's already a year in. So let's just see the next two and a half years.
Yeah, what's different about Lynch and McVay, right, is that Lynch has done TV. He worked in TV. And you remember you heard Aikman was on the McVay podcast with Schrager this year. They did a two-parter, right? Wasn't that Aikman? Wasn't that podcast Aikman was on?
I think
it was really good. And you could even tell Troy has this itch to be an NFL executive. He said it, that it's hard for him to scratch because of his work-life balance. He loves, the flexibility that football broadcasting gives him that being a GM wouldn't. But you can tell there's a part of Troy that thinks he would do he said it, I think I could do a good job. Well, John Lynch did too. John Lynch saw the opportunity with Kyle and he jumped on it. Most people have heard of this thing called Eustress. It's like EU stress is how you spell it. And it's good stress. It's stress. I think sometimes we think stress is all bad, but it's not. Eustress is a stress that comes from having a purpose and a goal and working towards something. And it's a stress that is beneficial to the person. And I think competitiveness or competitors seek that. John Lynch had a job that was probably fun, but it didn't have any eustress in it, right? Being a broadcaster for him, he wasn't broadcasting for his job every year. He didn't have that worry. He enjoyed going in and talking to quarterbacks and coaches and safeties and calling the game. But he even said, then you're done with the game and you and Burkhardt are hopping in the car heading to the airport and you didn't win or lose anything. You got nothing on the line. You got no juice. And he wanted the juice. Now, sometimes you want this juice and then you get the juice. You're like, all right, I've had my fill. I can go back to TV. And maybe he will one day. Maybe he will soon. I don't know. But I think the difference with Lynch and McVay is Lynch has lived that life and he knows there's just something that he couldn't get out of it that being in the fight gives him. So when they take a shot at John Lynch in the booth when he's the GM of the 49ers and he looks stressed, he'd love to be up 2 scores in the NFC Championship game and not sweating it out. But sweating it out is part of what he came back for. Nothing was making him sweat. What's the thing? What was the slogan? Was that DraftKings that had the slogan, feel the sweat or something? Wasn't that one of the slogans?
Under Armour?
No, it was. I think it was. I don't think it was MyBookie. I think it was Draft. But that is the point. He came back for that. Yeah. And I'd be a little surprised if he went back to TV that quickly. Now, like you said, you throw $100 million, but
there is just the one thing, and this is why I think McVay, why there might have been some substance behind it. It's just a lot of work. And it's a lot of time. They say this about Wall Street bankers. There's a reason they use cocaine, or they did back in the day, and Adderall, because you were at the office so much.
What were the the little the illegal pills where they get the lemons in Wolf of Wall Street.
Well, the ones that knock you out.
Yeah,
Quaaludes?
Quaaludes, yeah.
Well, those bring you down, and then you got to get back up. But there is no, like, you just work nonstop. And, like, let's face it. Like, I mean, I've done both. What we do now is not even close. It's not the same. And I do think there's a little disingenuous in pro sports about, like, the team and everything. But when you're at the top, like, ultimately you get all the credit or the pressure, so you feel a little bit different. Like, everyone's kind of out for themselves. It's kind of weird. You know, it's because in the media, I feel everyone's very selfish. It's very just about you or whatever you're doing. When you are on a team, it just is about the group. Like, ultimately, you win or lose as the group. There's something you're working toward. There are relationships that are just a little different because everyone is trying to, you know, you're always having an opponent. Like, even us, like, who is our opponent, really? There's not. I mean, we're just trying to make as much money and entertain as many people as possible. Right? I mean, it's just, there's not like why don't people like, who is your, like, terrestrial radio? I don't give, no, they're irrelevant to us. Our listeners, our people don't listen to them. So I understand where he's coming from. Like, I never got the high from, like, the wins and losses. I just hated the losses. I was like, this just didn't do it for me. But I also didn't play in the NFL, you know, or play a super high level of college. And I texted with, you know, Adam Peters.
What level of college did you play?
None. I didn't, but it's just, I was texting with Adam Peters after they beat Green Bay. I was like, hey, man, congratulations. And we were just kind of BSing about a couple things. Because I was asking him about the dude that got the Minnesota job. And then I started asking him, because we were making fun of each other, like, you know, fuck, you make a lot more money in VC. I'm like, well, I didn't have that opportunity as a Cal Poly guy. You, as a UCLA student, you could have done that and making six figures. Remember, he became a 20 for 20 for Belichick. He's like, yeah, a lot more money in that. But I'm like, nothing gives the high. This was a couple days after Green Bay. And his response was, nothing like it. And there is, like, once you've been in it, and he's been in it since, played at UCLA when they were fucking good at football, right? When they were competing to go to Rose Bowls. And then he got to Belichick. And he's just been inundated with it. Same with John Lynch, like Bill Walsh, Tony Dungy, John Gruden, Mike Shanahan, like the highest of the high. The highest of the high. And I just don't think you can go back. Like, once it's all you know. And I wonder if sometimes Sean McVay thinks, like, is there more out there for me? You know? And now those guys, like Adam Peters makes a shitload of money. Obviously, John makes a ton more. Sean McVay makes a ton. There's a balance of, like, you know, you can get down, I think, on anything you're doing. Whether you do podcasts for a living, whether you dig ditches for a living, whether you coach football for a living, you can get negative at times. That's why I do think, like, the emotion's high. It's different in football, like the heat of the moment. You know, most jobs you just keep doing, so it's like it's hard to remove yourself from. Most jobs, I say this all the time, like, social media always talks about vacation. When I was growing up, we went on, like, one vacation my entire life. Most people do not go on vacations. People on social media, and especially, like, the media and pro athletes who ever love talking about vacations, fucking most people do not have the money to go on vacations. Like, the majority of humans. So it's like, just go on vacation, get your head away. Like, no, most people can't do that. You're just kind of stuck in what you're doing. But if you can ever just remove the intensity of it and just take a deep breath, you realize, it's not that bad, you know?
Yeah, I think the thing with McVay that would be interesting is, like, clearly the drug that is football gets him high. Gets him really high. And I think when you're good at it, it gets you really, really high, right? The thing with McVay is, like, well, could he make just as much money to step away and start a family? Like, McVay's thing is not, I don't, this isn't for me anymore. I need to find something else. McVay's thing is, I go too hard at this. I might need to take a step back.
Well, what did I read? Maybe it was Peter King or Albert Breer a week ago. That, like, his first year, Kevin Demoff told him, like, you know, it's going to be hard to sustain doing it this way.
Yeah.
And he said, this is the only way I know how to do it. You know, I was thinking about it this morning, actually, in the car, because I think there are a lot of parallels with John Gruden, right? John Gruden ended up having a really successful career, made a lot of money. John Gruden didn't choose TV. He got fired from the NFL. If John Gruden had been winning like McVay, John Gruden would not have left Tampa Bay. John Gruden didn't, quote-unquote, get burned out. He got run out, right? If John Gruden had just had, like, they had been like the Eagles, every year just in the playoffs, like Andy Reid, just being consistent, and he just could have been there 15 years. Don't you think John Gruden would have been there 15 years? John Gruden was not, I don't think John Gruden was like, I want to leave. They fucking threw a shit out the door. Sean McVay, to me, the parallels there wouldn't be equal at all. Now, John, I think people view him as like the young John Gruden, but if John Gruden at 36 was kicking ass, he would have stayed.
Kind of talks like him. I mean, that's part of why.
Worked for him, a lot of his mannerisms. He feels like, he's worked for both the brothers. So he just feels kind of like, if you said he was a Gruden's cousin, people would believe you.
A happier Gruden. Yeah, man. Hey, Peter, man. So do you think...
Feels like a mixture of the two, John and Jay, with a little, Shanahan in him.
Well, the crazy thing is he didn't need that family. He comes from a football family.
I know.
Okay, McVay, does he go to TV in the next, where should we put the number? 8 years, 10 years?
Yeah, I'd say, he's going to get burned out. But I think he's got a 3 or 4 year run with the Rams when they give him a huge amount of money. Just take your shot in your 30s. You can build your family, or impregnate your wife. And they're not even married. They're getting married this summer. What he said, he wants to start a family. I think
I know. Impregnate your wife is just a weird way to say it.
Yeah, she'll be pregnant, I would say, in the next 9 months, and then you still got 9 months from there. So you got a couple seasons minimum before you're like, you're not around Sean Jr. enough. Because even that first year he's young and he's crying.
Well, here's the other thing that could happen, right? Is you get better at it. You get better at. I think one of the questions I would have now over the next 5-10 years is, does Sean McVay, does he find a way to remain as successful as he's been to this point by changing the way he works? And it's hard when you're losing assistants all the time like he is. That makes it challenging.
I think that makes it difficult.
Like I asked Kyle Whittingham one time, like, what's changed, right? He's had this program at Utah that has just been building and building and building and building and building. I mean, he won a Sugar Bowl a long time ago, right? Against Alabama, like good Alabama at the time, Nick Saban, Alabama. And then he finally went and he said one thing that's changed is he's learned how to delegate. Like he learned how to just not be there late into the night all the time. But Utah doesn't lose coaches the way that nobody loses coaches like McVay.
Is Kyle Whittingham their defensive coordinator?
What do you mean?
Like he's not calling their defensive plays, is he?
No.
Sean is their
offensive coordinator either.
I know. Oh, Sean's their play caller, and you'd say his greatest attribute is him dialing up the plays. That's where I think it is difficult for Kyle, LaFleur, Sean. Like, when do any of those guys get to a point where it's like, I just need to delegate a little more, no calling plays? If I was a fan of one of those teams, I'd be like, what? No.
Yeah, they would delegate literally everything else outside of before delegating that, right?
That to me is the problem for them. They feel kind of stuck. Like I never take my foot off the pedal on that. And it's hard for me to half-ass it when I am the play caller. I think it's easier to do a little more 7 to 8, during the season. I mean, higher end working hours, but not like 9 to 5. Yeah. When you're just Nick Saban.
Yeah, you go to the coach's show and then you head home for the night.
I think it's a little more difficult when you're the play caller and you're good and your team's good and you're like, I just don't feel like I fucking know enough. I think that makes it difficult.
You almost need him to start mailing it in a little bit.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm not mailing it in yet.
Not mailing it, but Stafford.
Well, that's why to me he can't leave.
But I just mean Stafford helps him, I would imagine, too. Like maybe you don't have to do as much to get ready for a game as you used to have to do if your quarterback is basically your offensive coordinator.
Which I think he's talked about how comfortable he got as the season went on with Matt.
Yeah, so maybe that can dial things back a little bit for him.
Yeah, like Matt, you
like Brady will
Tuesday morning.
Yeah. All right, John Lynch in the next 5 years, is he back in TV?
I think it's very predicated on what becomes of the quarterback.
If Trey Lance is a franchise quarterback, he doesn't.
I think he's writing it out for a little while. Because if you just won one Super Bowl, you'd be thinking, well, can we win a couple?
Right, which is what McVay has to be thinking.
The difference is like, Sean, you won the Super Bowl. Like, he did accomplish it. Now he's just going to rattle off some records, right? Try to win as many games. John Lynch could be thinking, like, I'm already in the Hall of Fame. I'm trying to become a legend.
Yeah.
Like,
would he get in the Niners? Can we get in the Niners Ring of Honor? Like, you put together 15 years? Yeah. I watched like the Game Pass version of the Rams Patriots Super Bowl the other day. and this was the week after the football was done, and I needed to watch something. And you forget. I mean, not you forget. The score was close, but the Rams defense played really well that day. Like McVay, we kind of mock them because their offense didn't get anything going against the Patriots, right? That game, I think, was it 3-0 at halftime? You know what I'm saying? Like McVay kind of gets killed for that game because they couldn't do anything offensively, but it's not like they got their asses kicked. Their defense came ready to play. My takeaway from that game was, God, they like Aaron Donald and Sean McVay could have 2 Super Bowls. You know,
Well,
they
that's when I think Goff died to him. When he goes, he's just not good enough at the highest moment to get it done.
Yeah.
I think that's when you just don't ever look at him the same. And we've all had those moments with humans for whatever reason. Once a human goes, I don't quite look at him the same, in the business sense, it's hard to kind of shake that.